Monday, August 12th, regular Board of Education meeting to order. Nikki, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Nikki Austin, present. Jim Curran.
Present.
Rich Debris.
Present.
Eric Ekdahl.
Present.
Mike Proseth.
Present.
Teresa King. Present. Dylan McGuire.
Present.
Terry Montgomery. Present. Phil Glassberg.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. We are in session. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this evening.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Eric and a second by Nikki. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is our consent agenda. Do any board members wish to remove a consent agenda item for individual consideration? Hearing none, we're approving the minutes from our previous meeting. We're approving an amended minutes from the 7/8/24 meeting. Approval of support staff resignation, Sandy Cecil, middle school cook. After, how many years of service? Several, correct?
Several.
30?
37.
37 years.
That's amazing.
37 years.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you so much, Sandy. Cynthia Hermanson, middle school special education aide. Approval of support staff hiring, Melanie Palombi, Parkside special education aide. Angelique Ellenson, Parkside PT aide. Emily Smith, Northside health assistant. Approval of public library hirings, Olivia Rowe, programming and senior outreach librarian. Emma Thompson, page. Ryan Carter, page. Approval of exempt staff hiring, Eric Jubeck, athletic and activities director. Approval of professional staff hiring, Emily Benshaw, middle school special education teacher. Acceptance of a community donation, it's $200 from the Alpha Delta Kappa. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Jim. To approve the consent agenda as presented by voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're on to public comment. We have one person signed up for public comment this evening, Mr. Waskey. I'll go over the rules. I'm sure you're familiar with them, but I'll roll through them real quick. For those of you unfamiliar or familiar with public comment or open meetings, this is your opportunity to speak. During the rest of the meeting, there's no opportunity for feedback from the public, and you're making a statement or a speech about your opinion on a topic pertinent to the business that the board conducts and within their legitimate jurisdiction. Because our board meetings are a meeting held in public, not a public meeting, there would not be a dialogue with you about your comment, and that means while the board may not respond directly to your comments, we will take them into consideration as those matters come before the board. Please do not infer our lack of interaction as an implicit agreement for your statement. Ask that you limit your comment to 5 minutes and begin with your name for the record, please.
All right, my name is Rick Waskey. I live at 1015 4th Street North in Monroe. As many of you are aware, I'm former superintendent in this school district, also former high school principal. Very proud to have raised my family for a majority of our family's history in Monroe, and couldn't be more pleased that both my children are graduates of Monroe High School. I have 3 things I want to mention to the board tonight before you deliberate regarding this year's potential operating referendum. Number 1, I just want to thank the board for their service. I think it was probably my second last year as superintendent. At that time, there were 8 school districts out of 420 plus school districts in Wisconsin that had volunteer boards, and we were one of them. So I just want you to know, as a resident and parent, how much I appreciate your humble service to the community and the work you do. It's thankless, it's actually penniless, and I just want you to know that it is greatly appreciated. Secondly, I do want to go back to the operating referendum of 2018 and apologize for the board because my lack of vision as a leader has led you to where you are right now. So I went back in some of my personal notes because I actually kept some back when I worked, and the school perception survey results we had going into the 2018 operating referendum showed that the operating referendum we were asking for was going to pass at approximately a 2/3 to 1/3 ratio, yes to no. That was significantly higher than the 2016 referendum had passed. And I felt very good and was quite confident that the 5-year, $1.5 million per year operating referendum was going to pass. And it did, and it exceeded that survey information we had. It was around 70%. But my apology comes for the fact that I didn't lead the board in asking for what we needed, which was a recurring $1.5 million referendum, because I was fully aware that nothing was going to change with the state funding in education. It was going to continue to be funded at below the inflationary levels. And quite frankly, the recurring referendum would have passed, and it would have passed easily that year. So I apologize for not making the right recommendation in 2018. But that's really what the district needed and still needs. So my third item is, if the board decides to finalize a referendum question for November of 2024, I kind of see it as doing two things. And truthfully, as a resident, I'm going to support either one, because I support the work you do, and I understand that the decisions you make are decisions you would think are right. If you're going to ask me what I think the right decision is, the right thing is to ask for a recurring $1.5 million a year referendum, because after 8 years, the need hasn't changed. In fact, if you go back to 2018 and put $1.5 million in an inflation calculator, it's $2 million. So the board has made a $500,000 plus in cuts over that time, and yet we're still in the same funding situation we were in then, and will continue to be. It's not going to just magically be rectified in a couple of years. However, if you're going to do what you think has a better chance to pass at the ballot box, a defined term defined term non-recurring referendum potentially could do better at the ballot box. And I understand ultimately if that's the direction the board goes. But again, it's going to lead to the exact same question X number of years from now. The need will not go away. And then ultimately, you have no idea what the winds of change are going to be between now, then, and later. 2018, it was going to pass. That simple. Whatever we would have asked for. 2020 was when I anticipated having a building referendum. It wasn't going to be 2022. So I knew that we were going to have this overlap, but I also thought it was going to be about 4 years later. And we had been accustomed to referendums at about those intervals. But we ended up going to referendum in 2022. COVID happened, all sorts of things happened, and we are where we are now. Ultimately, I'm going to support whatever decision you make. I'm not going to stay around and listen to it, because I'm going to go home and do what retired people do and watch the Brewers and Dodgers. But I just wanted to let the board members who weren't on the board know that I do take some responsibility for not recommending a recurring operating referendum in 2018. It's what we needed then. It's really what you need now. And then ultimately, if you think you have to do a non-recurring, because that's the only way that there's any chance on God's green earth that it would pass, I understand that, but it also pushes the same question down the road with no changes in the near future. So again, I appreciate your service. I'm grateful for what you do for our students, staff, and community, and I wish you the best in making the wisest decision you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay. That concludes public comments. No old business. Moving on to new business. Next item is our discussion on the operating referendum. So this is a continuation of our discussion around placing an operating referendum question on the ballot in November. And first, I'm going to start with a little bit about the mechanics of the process for tonight. First, we're going to continue our discussion, and then pending that, the board will need to consider a resolution first authorizing the district to exceed revenue limits, that's also known as the question language, and then a companion resolution providing for a referendum election that places our previously considered resolution actually on the ballot. It's what directs our clerk to contact election officials and place it on the ballot. So in previous discussions, I will recap those. Administration did a great job describing the funding shortfalls that state legislators for the last 15 to 20 years have created for public schools and creating a funding crisis across the state. And in turn, normalizing a cycle of asking local voter support to continue to provide the same level of services as previous years, not necessarily to enhance them. Administration provided comparative data for schools in our area, highlighting revenue cap exemptions approved by voters across our region, which Monroe is in the lower half of the accumulated referendum authority when compared to our Badger Conference comparables, and third from the bottom when compared to the Rock Valley Conference schools. What that means is that in light of the public school funding climate not even keeping up with inflation, our district, and through administrative actions, their thoughtful budgeting and cost containment has been able to maintain services while seldom asking for additional authority through operating referendums, while we're surrounded by districts who have had to repeatedly. Administration also describes some cost containment measures taken through their budget reductions and their ongoing expense control, which further highlighted and demonstrated the fiscal responsibility and the stewardship that the district has maintained to place us in a position to rely on our fund balance along with the renewal of a referendum to exceed revenue limits at the same level it's been at since 2016. To briefly recap the board conversation at our last meeting, there was consensus around the amount to ask at 1.5 million. It's the same amount that's been authorized for the prior 8 years. It is not an increase. The remaining item to discuss was the duration, whether we would ask our community to authorize it for 4 years or for it to be recurring. So we're gonna have some discussion, and then as we head into that discussion, I'll start off with my thoughts and then I'll turn it over to the board. At our last meeting, I was fairly bullish on the prospect that if we asked our community again to support maintaining the same level of funding at 1.5 million, knowing that that in itself is a compromise, being balanced and coupled with our fund balance, we should ask for it to be recurring. It was already a compromise in and of itself. And at the time, my rationale is that there's simply no reason to believe that school funding, revenue limits, any of that process will change dramatically in the coming years. And that's sort of gloom and doom, and it's frustrating, really. It's a frustrating reality of the budgeting process that we have up in Madison. However, despite that gloomy context, reflecting on the meeting and the discussions that we had here, a possible alternative path resonated with me, one that was a little more hopeful than trying to stay ahead of underfunding from the state. So considering the momentum that our community is clearly building to grow, not only the tax base, but also our population, I'm warming to the thought that an authorization for 4 years instead of a recurring referendum might be something that we consider. Despite some folks feeling that our community is on a path to contract, I see signs all around us pointing to growth. That growth is a possible path forward. There's a once-in-a-lifetime investment in our YMCA as it transforms in front of our eyes. There are multiple efforts to address housing shortages in Monroe, 3 separate private developments that I'm aware of. GCDC is partnering with the district to build new homes while providing critically needed skills to our students as they contemplate entering the workforce. With that first home from the ground up build scheduled for the next school year on land donated by the city of Monroe. Tireless hours of efforts from our educators, our staff, our administrators to individualize learning for every student is beginning to turn a corner. And last year, we saw those results as DPI measured performance metrics increased. We've got some of the best elementary schools in the state, in our city. And our new high school campus will be completed in 2 years, which the districts that we have had communication with tends to lead to enrollment increases. when communities make a once-in-a-lifetime generational investment like that. So for all those reasons, at least for my part, I've got hope that in 4 years' time, we'll begin to see those investments that are being made across our community have a positive effect, not only on the tax base, but also on overall enrollment, which also helps to relieve that deficit that we're observing. And I'm willing to give it 4 years to observe that momentum and then reassess, especially if it makes it easier for the community to understand the need and the question before them. So those are sort of my thoughts on that, to open up the discussion and open it up to board members to go ahead and begin.
I agree with you. I'm more conservative than you, though. I think we're gonna be back here again in 4 years, but overwhelmingly, the people that I've talked to have approached me about the referendum are very concerned about non-recurring referendum. So, or about a recurring referendum. So I definitely think we're gonna be back here in 4 years asking again for, maybe it's not the whole, to your point, 1.5 million for something, right? To continue operating costs, but I think we have to approach it as a 4-year non-recurring referendum.
I've been to a handful of community meetings, and overwhelmingly, they want non-reoccurring when I talk to people in the community. And so I'm kind of still where I was at the last board meeting, that I'd rather see us do the 1.5 for 4 years non-reoccurring. And just, I believe that will, hopefully we'll see that growth, and then when we come back in 4 years, it'll be a different story. Because I know we're gonna have to come back. And I don't like that.
Yeah, and
Teresa.
Anyone?
I was gonna say, I had said at the last meeting, if we all can agree, we agreed on the number, we agree on the need, and if the how to get there is non-recurring, then that's fine. That has my support as well. I'm hopeful that, do we need this? Absolutely. Should it be recurring? Just everything Rick just said made sense. Everything you said made sense. But I also, I'm hearing from people as well, and I want to make sure that we're honoring that they have choice. So I'm fine with it being a non-recurring 4-year.
I think you just said that well. That's really kind of the headspace I think I'm in. I agree with what Rick said. I think you summed it up really, really well. I think this is absolutely necessary and needed, and so whatever path we need to do right now to get there, I think is important. So.
Yeah, my position hasn't changed since our last meeting. I think it needs to be non-recurring 4 years. I'm just uncomfortable doing anything that could create any jeopardy. It's critically needed, and that we'll likely be back here in 4 years, and probably will. But I think some folks in our community feel like putting a time limit on it gives control to the community and the taxpayers, as it well should. And that's my concern with non-recurring, or excuse me, the recurring. I really appreciate Rick's comments. He makes some very good points. Rich, I think you did a great summary. There's been other good comments, so I won't repeat all those, but I agree with that. So I'm for non-recurring 4 years.
Anyone else?
I want to commend you, Rich, for saying what you said at the beginning of this meeting. I do think it's pretty rare that somebody changes their opinion on like a big issue. And so even to and you and I really haven't talked about this, so to demonstrate the openness to something different, and just the way that you put that, because honestly, I've been thinking about it more from the sense of like what is going to pass. And to hear you frame it the way that you did, it's like, maybe the opposite is true, right? Like maybe we are a community that is on the other side of some hard things with brighter days ahead of us. And so I just want to say thank you for the words you shared at the top of this and kind of putting out there a compelling and positive vision of the future of Monroe. And I think it's not everybody's willing to kind of reconsider their position on something. So I thank you for that. Similarly, I'm in that space too, as other board members have mentioned. I think we should get sharp on what it is that would demonstrate to our community a strong return on investment over the next 3 years so that we can come back and say, hey, we're asking this from you now and we want to deliver. We want to come back and say that we delivered on the results that we said we would. And so I'm in a similar position as the other board members who've spoken so far.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else?
That being said, Rich, I'd make a motion to authorize the district budget to exceed revenue limit by $1.5 million per year for 4 years for non-recurring purposes.
I would second that.
Okay, I was just rereading it just to make sure I'm gonna get this one right. So I've got Mike with the motion and Jim with the second. Again, it's to approve the resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit by 1.5 million per year for 4 years for non-recurring purposes as presented. Any conversation before we vote? By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, so the companion resolution to place that, to provide for placing the question in the next election. Okay, got it. Is item C. There's a sample motion there if somebody would like to make it.
The motion providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit by $1.5 million for 4 years for non-reoccurring purposes.
Motion by Mike
Second.
and a second by Dylan. Conversation before we vote. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will table D and E. They are not necessary. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are now going to move on to item F. This is a concrete flatwork bid approval. So tonight we've got for action, review and possible approval of the concrete flatwork bid. We've got Tony from CG here, and we've got Mike from Huffman in attendance to answer any questions that we have. Presentation of the package. Mike, are you doing it or are you doing it, Tony?
I am.
Okay, go for it.
So it's pretty short this time. We only got one more category. Again, just kind of going over the summary here of what this is. This is for a hard bid, contract lump sum for site concrete flat work. Some of you may know that we previously bid out site concrete as a whole, and we only got one bidder, and it was over budget. So what we did was we split that out to make it more appealing for other people to bid. So what we did was took all the, I'll call site concrete, which is what was originally determined to be everything outside of the original high school building, right? That entire site concrete package, aside from curb and gutters, was gonna be bid out. We only got one bid. So now we've taken, what that included was sidewalks, patios, exterior stairs, foundations for athletic equipment, curbs for the track, different things like that, just odds and ends concrete around the job site. Well, some bidders thought that was, I think, just a little too messy and too much stuff to drag along for so long. So that's why we decided to, okay, let's park that for a second. Let's come up with a game plan for that, which we are still working through. And let's just finalize just the flat work, which is just the sidewalks, anything that's basically slab on grade, no foundations. So what we did was we peeled that scope out and rebid that, and that's what we have here. So the results are two bidders, Parisi and CG Schmidt. So Parisi is obviously more cost competitive. The nice thing about Parisi doing the site flat work is they also, if you remember, were awarded the curb and gutter work for the site. So those two often go hand in hand pretty well. It's what Parisi does a lot of, so, you know, I'm confident with either selection here. Any questions on what was presented?
I just see sidewalk from 31st to the lot as part of it. Is there sidewalk on 31st part of this as well, or is that part of the scope of the project right now?
It's not part of the scope of the project right now. That sidewalk that was referred to there was from 31st to the building. Yep.
Dylan, I don't believe there was a sidewalk for 31st planned on there.
Yeah, I know there's kind of piecemeal sidewalk over there right now, so I wasn't sure if the city was recommending we do so or not.
Yeah, we did, when we did close on the property, the city took like an extra number of feet off of that roadway to come in, so potentially maybe for that option, but I'm not sure, so.
And recommendation from Huck McKeel and administration?
Yeah, we support this approach. Parisi is a known contractor. They're based out of Verona. They have been operating in the area for a long time. Recently got bought out by Wallbeck, but I think it's still the same people in leadership, and they still focus on the same work. So I don't see them, I don't know that I've ever seen them propose on structural or building concrete work. They really focus on curb and gutter and flat work, and I think that's why it was really wise to break that out as a separate bid and give an opportunity there. Also, you know, concrete, kind of the same material, but it's very different in forming it up and the fussiness of the building and even some of the foundations for the outbuildings that we have. So it makes sense to me that they would just focus on that curb and gutter and flat work, and we've still got one more piece where we can solicit some opportunities on just what I'll say is sort of the outbuilding areas, the concessions, the dugouts, things like that, which is more to come in the process. But yes, very much in support of it.
The recommendation on the flat work would be for Parisi, for the board to approve that. And then the one thing, Tony, and maybe you kind of alluded to this too, but the foundations and footings yet is still something we're working on yet to get done, correct?
Yeah, so to be very clear, the main high school building footings and foundations has already been awarded previously. We're talking about the footings and foundations for the outbuildings, concessions, maintenance, building, stuff like that. That's the miscellaneous footings and foundations we're talking about. And I'm looking at opportunities to buy out some of the foundations for athletic equipment through the athletic equipment vendors. So we're kind of got a few paths we're pursuing right now, as well as going back and double checking the drawings to make sure we get the most cost-effective approach. So that'll be the next board meeting we'll most likely bring that.
I see you put 60,000 in for future potential expense in both bids. I mean, whatever we can do, you know, like weather and so on and so forth to manage those. You know, if we can keep that at a third of what you budgeted for, it'll bring this bid in the budget, I guess, right?
Yep. Because we're 42,000 over right now.
Right.
The budget amount. Yep.
Who was the single bidder? Was it you guys? Okay, I mean, I want to point out, because we're looking at this and I don't think you actually mentioned it, the two bidders were Parisi and CG Schmidt. So the fact that you guys were the only bidder, instead of just saying, okay, we got it, right? You school board is going to take this, you split it out and open it up so that we could potentially see if there was better pricing. I commend you guys for that, because that kind of instills, trust, right? It tells us that we're doing the right thing and that you're actually doing what's in the best interest of the district, but also the project. So I think that's important to note. And I don't know if you have a comment on that, Mike. Did you guys have something to do with that, or?
Thanks for bringing that up. I agree. You hire a construction manager to manage your job. Now, they got a brother over here that happens to be a hard bidder,
right? And they have to be treated like every other hard bidder. So CG Schmidt, the construction manager, has to wear the hat that is, what's the best route for the district? And if the brother gets the job, they have to win it, right? Otherwise, we go on to somebody else. So it's a great point, and I also appreciate it.
All right. This one's before us for approval tonight, so I would entertain a motion if somebody would like to make it.
It would be to accept the bid for concrete flatwork. There's an actual number on it too. But that would be okay to just put in a motion.
Yep, I think we were gonna do as presented. So I'd be looking for a motion and a second to approve concrete flatwork to Parisi as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Terry, second by Nikki. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item. We have an amendment to the road access agreement with Bader-Spidahl. So this is an item for the board for action. If you guys recall, previously we approved the alternate access agreement, sometimes referred to the road as the road to the north, and I think has it been named? It's been named
Cheesemaker Way.
Cheesemaker Way. So this is for Cheesemaker Way.
Seriously?
Seriously?
That's cool.
The city had requested initially that they have a 66-foot wide right-of-way. They have updated that to request an 80-foot right-of-way for traffic management. Is that about it?
Yes, and this would be for the part that's going through that northwest part of the north side, and it's going around the well, the city well. That's gonna join up with the development that's just north of the school lot. They are also making a section of that 80 feet wide per the city request to handle any extra traffic that might deal with any commercial properties that are gonna be there, so.
Okay. And the amendment attached to the packet was prepared by board legal counsel.
That's correct, Bill Fahey, correct, prepared that, yep.
Okay.
And it's been agreed to, I have signatures from the owners. So it's been agreed to by them, we just need board approval. Once that's finished, then we can go ahead and set up the survey, get that marked out based on the site plan and get it locked out. There's one other piece that'll be coming probably to the next meeting, and that's the north, this is kind of tied into this a little bit. It's the north section of our property. We're gonna add 3 more feet to it to make that a full 66 feet. So we have 30, B&S has 30. They're gonna give 3 more, we're gonna give 3 more. And then that road will be dedicated to the city when it's finished.
All right. Any additional questions for?
The only thing that this changes is the amount of the width for the road, right?
That is correct.
It's not making the road bigger, or is it? I mean,
Well,
the pavement and all that stuff, or is it just easement type of?
Yeah, so the road's not designed yet,
Okay.
but in the city code, the maximum they can go is up to 80 feet.
Okay.
So they wanted to have that option if they needed to go up to 80 feet. So that's what we're doing, is we're giving them up to 80 feet of that right of way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right, this one's before us for action. Somebody would like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Eric, second by Mike, to approve the First Amendment to alternate access. Sorry, it's in the folder. Agreement as presented. Discussion before we vote. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the Employee Handbook. It's attached to our packets for review. That's redlined, and then I believe there's also a summary of changes to the document. I'll hand it over to Ron to walk us through anything significant he wants to highlight.
Yeah, I created the summary document so we can go through that rather quickly without having to scan through the whole of the handbook. And if you have areas where you have questions or would like to look at, we can. All the changes are predominantly pretty minor. this year. We are in discussions with MEA about Appendix D and E, which is some of the co-curricular and extracurricular pays. And hopefully next year, as we negotiate and get ready for next summer, we'll have some changes there, but they're not ready for this year. And then when we finish tonight, Chandra will clean up any last little things that we might see. But, you know, I'll just quick run through this summary of the changes. On page 6, we simply fixed a typo. On page 9, recall when we were in COVID, we had added some language when we were doing virtual snow days with one-on-one instruction. We're still doing virtual snow days, but we don't do them as one-on-one instruction. So some of the language that applied to paraprofessionals doesn't apply anymore. So we've taken out that language that we had added during COVID. On page 15, there was a discussion of FMLA, and it just strictly said professional staff, and the reality is we apply FMLA to whoever is qualified to receive it, so we just removed the word professional there. On page 32, there's a section that talks about if you have a change in your status that might result in a change in insurance, that you need to let the district office and the insurance company know in 30 days. And the language did say, or you might have to, prove, insurability. The reality is we don't really control that, the insurance company does. And so one of the options could be that the insurance company simply says you're denied insurance for a year, and then you can reapply next year when the period opens again. So we added that language to make sure we covered that, because we don't control that. 36 and 43, we eliminated some obsolete language referencing pagers and typewriters, which really don't come into play a lot anymore. On page 47, we simply updated the policy numbers. I believe that's actually might be related to our Title IX complaints. And then we also updated one of our appendix letters that got re-lettered. On page 56, 18 years ago when I came and we were in the hole, we did not allow any overtime, and if there was any overtime, people had to take comp time because we didn't simply have any money. That hasn't been the case for a number of years. We still limit and control the amount of overtime we have, but we pay overtime if it's there. So we've eliminated the language about comp time and requirement to take comp time. Page 58, apologize for the typo there. Route was spelled correctly in the handbook previously as RUTE. We just changed that from special route driver to special education driver. On page 61, we had a typo. On pages 91 to 94, we, back during when educator effectiveness first came out, there was all this language about alternative ways to keep and be licensed. And so we had came up with this rather cumbersome 3 pages of language for alternative education that could be used in place of credits. And so since that licensing doesn't really apply anymore, we're able to remove that language. If people want to move on our salary schedule, they need to take credits. Page 95, last year we updated at the board level the subpay, so this just gets those numbers reflected in the handbook. We also updated our summer pay. We kept our base summer pay for our, for lack of a better word, fun experiential classes the same. But for some of those core classes like reading, math, et cetera, where we're struggling to find people who really want to come in and do that during the summer, we did up the pay for that a little bit. So hopefully we can keep the people interested in doing those classes as well. On page 98, we again updated an appendix reference letter. On 105, we just clarified some language on extended personal leave. Basically, I'm trying to recall exactly what we changed. There wasn't significant changes there. I'd have to go to page 105 to look to see exactly what the changes, but it's escaping me, but it wasn't large right now. Page 110, updated liquidated damages. We're increased to more aligned with other districts. We went from $500 post July 1 to $1,500 post July 1. And then the borrowing of sick time had been eliminated from other sections, but for whatever reason hadn't been noticed in the admin section, so we eliminated the borrowing of sick time, which basically says if you run out of sick leave, can you borrow 5 days from your next year's allocation? And it's something we had stopped doing because it was being used more oftentimes with sometimes new parents, and then they would choose to stay home with their child and not come back, and then we'd have to recover the 5 days of sick pay, so we had moved it out of the other areas and had just missed it in that area. And then in Appendix B1, as a legacy thing, it had always referenced city rep now because that's who you turned your stuff into for years, and so now we changed it to mention the position name instead of Cindy. You know, because we're not sure Chandra's gonna be there for 30-plus years, and so, or 40-plus years, and so we thought it would be better to do it that way. Any question on any of these? Again, it's pretty minor changes. A lot of it's just language cleanup well, actually it all is to some degree, so.
Mentioned the liquidated damages red lines, but I don't see red lines in the document.
There should be on page,
So no, I believe those were taken out because we weren't finished with that. So contracts are out, so we're gonna get the liquidated damages language buttoned up and brought back to the board at a later date.
I thought we updated, let me just check that, the amount, but obviously, we have to put it into effect with the contracts when they're due, but.
Just out of curiosity, because I've never seen that in an employment contract, is that enforced and enforceable?
Yes.
It's just interesting.
Yeah, so you're under contract to work and there's a cost to replace somebody that breaks their contract. So as long as the costs are relatable and relevant to the cost of replacement, yes.
There is language, well, I don't want to say at the legislative level, I think it's actually at the federal level right now of making it so that you couldn't do that. But then obviously there's challenges against that, and so there's a lot to be played out there. But for now, that is allowed. And I might have missed your question, Mike. Did you say it wasn't changed in the contract or in the handbook?
In the handbook.
501,000 on page
Yeah.
110.
I think it's increasing, so I'll double check that.
The intent is to approve it as presented tonight, though. Change it at a future meeting.
I'm looking at Chandra, did you have, is there a?
So that was the one that was pending that I spoke to Fig about today, so that it doesn't affect contracts this
Yeah,
year.
so-
Oh, okay, so the version I had seen, we'd already changed the numbers, so I didn't realize you guys had reversed field on me, so apologize for that.
So that piece will change.
Yep,
in
it'll come back
preparation for
after we-
contracts next year.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Have we enforced that though? Because I know there were times when that was never enforced.
It's enforced.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've enforced a lot. Oftentimes, I mean, what happens now is sometimes the new districts will actually cover for the
They'll cover it
employees,
for
but,
'em, yeah.
But it has been enforced.
Because it does put us in a real pinch when somebody resigns after that point in time. It really makes it tough for hiring people.
It happens more often now than it did.
Than it did. Okay.
Much more often.
All right, any further discussion on the employee handbook? Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Terry with the motion and Eric with the second. Conversation or discussion before we vote? By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is item I, it's the second reading and approval. This one's for action this evening of our Title IX policy changes. Nothing has changed since the first reading. No feedback was provided, so just be looking for a motion and a second. If anybody has any questions.
Question.
Sure.
So I don't remember us reading this at the last one. Maybe it was in there and I just overlooked it. But is this, because there's a lot of information out there, so I want to be clear. Is this allowing in the wording, because I read it on here and then I went online looking at different articles and looked at PBS. Is this allowing transgender students to use the bathroom of their choice and to participate in sports as if they were a transgender female, they would participate in female sports? Otherwise, we would be considered being discriminatory.
So that does not specifically speak to that. What these changes do, these are all what-if scenarios that people are putting out there, right? What this speaks to is what it's doing is looking at, it's not just sexual harassment, it's about sexual discrimination.
Right.
So that's what it is, but it's really about tightening up the timelines, the grievance process, because whether this rule was changed or not, those things could still be challenged under Title IX.
Okay. Because it's out there that that's what this is about.
So this is federal law as of
Right,
August 1st
right,
also.
and we won't get our funding if we don't approve it.
So, and even some of the schools that are not where we are with it, as far as long as we are, they're still obligated to follow this law. So in Wisconsin, there were 24 or 25 districts that were named in the federal lawsuit, but they're still obligated in the state of Wisconsin to follow this.
Okay, because there's 14 states that have lawsuits against the federal government for this Title IX update.
Correct. Wisconsin is not one of them.
They are not, that is correct. Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
All right. And this one's for action, and if anybody would like to make a motion to approve.
So moved. Second?
Motion by Jim, second by Dylan. To approve the Title IX policy changes as presented. Conversation before we vote. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Yeah.
Consent is noted. Next item on the agenda is item J, curriculum and instruction update. Over to Todd.
It is just a brief update. We're in the middle of August, so it's crunch time. For our building leaders, teachers are obviously back in the buildings and working with teams to prep for the year. So I just wanted to outline a couple things going on over the next couple weeks. OTUS training, which is our new data management system that I talked about at our last meeting. That started last week, the initial onboarding process, and that will continue this week with our staff. We had ELL registration going on at the high school today and tomorrow. New Teacher Academy is next week on Wednesday. Counted 10 new teaching professional staff that will be part of that, which is actually a little bit low probably compared to typical years.
We've had well over 20, so.
So that's great. Knock on wood, we still have a couple weeks till the school year starts, but that's a lower number. And then, just over the next couple weeks, we're gonna be working with building principals to finalize in-service plans and roll out the goals and the action steps for the year. And Joe and I are gonna be traveling around to each of the buildings and sharing some of that information and working through a few of the things that we have listed in our plan. So we're working through final prep. When we meet in September for our first curriculum meeting, and Teresa, I sent this to you today, Joe and I will share some of those goals and action steps at that first meeting in September, so we can outline all the details and all the things that we got going on. That's it.
Any additional questions or follow-up with Todd? Thank you. All right, on to item K. It is our high school building update, so work continues on the site. A lot of earth being moved. We had a concrete bid before the board tonight for approval. 2 more bid packages, the larger bid packages are in the works as we get closer to the guaranteed maximum price or the GMP. I think towards the end of September is a target for that. Anything you want to add or color or context around the work that's been completed?
Just a few things. Everybody's really been busy, so We currently, there's drilling being done to do the initial blasting, and we're getting those details worked out, so that'll be starting pretty soon. Bid package 4 is due tomorrow, Tony, correct?
Yep, bids are due tomorrow.
Yep, so August 13th, so they'll be reviewed and scoped out, and that's what CG and HK will do on that stuff. That bid pack has a fair amount of alternatives, correct? That's one that we had a lot of alternative options.
17 alternatives and 41 bid packages, so
It's
it's a heavy
big.
lift.
So, we are interviewing furniture vendors tomorrow. So Mike Huffman is gonna be there, doing that. Carl's gonna be on the site tomorrow. And then Mike will be with us, doing the furniture vendor stuff. CG Schmidt's gonna start their drone video, process, so the photo and video, so the time lapse stuff. So we have it, I think the training might be tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, okay. So, and then the RFP process, so, Ryan, from Huffman Keel is initiating the RFP process for branding for the new high school. And we're gonna do that, and we're gonna see what other ideas there are out there in addition to the ones that we have. Community Legacy meeting is gonna be scheduled in September, and that'll be after a vendor's been selected for branding, so they can be in on that discussion. And then bid package 5 is being submitted to PRA for review. I think it might have been Friday when they sent it to PRA for review. It was Friday for bid pack 5, so that'll be going out in the next week or so, I would guess. That's what's going on.
How you feeling, Mike?
We're good. You know, this time in a project, people ask what's going on, and the answer is moving dirt. Which, if you go by the site, it's actually pretty exciting, right? The site has changed significantly over time here. There are a couple things that we look for in this phase, really, with the amount of cut and fill we have on the site. You have to be very sure that you're getting the compaction that's necessary, so we later have the bearing capacity to construct the building on. So we got our first site inspection report from CGC, not to be confused with CGS. CGC is our materials testing firm, so they come out and they do, help me, it's nuclear something prodding, can't remember exactly the test.
Yeah, I think it's a Proctor test, is that right?
Nuclear Proctor test, there you go, that's it. But that measures whether or not the contractor is achieving the compaction that they need to do. And the compaction is a very laborious activity. It has to be done at every so often lift of material out there. So there's a lot of testing that goes on to make sure they get that right. So it's a little bit more than just bulldozers pushing dirt around on the site. But we feel pretty good about it. We're headed towards footings and foundations for the main building that is scheduled now for the first week of September, I think. Maybe
Second week, we might pull it ahead a week. Yes, very close.
Had a little bit of a snafu here on finalizing the contract for the entity that's gonna do the rock blasting, so they just sent the contract back at the beginning of this meeting, so there is now a 7:30 meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning to make sure we agree with all any changes that they may have made to that contract. So we will not allow them to commence their work until we have a signed contract on that. But I'm hopeful that by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll be able to do that. And then as Fig said, furniture selection of vendors. I think we had 7 or 8 proposers on the project, so that's a pretty good amount of interest there. We had really 4 solid vendors that we're taking a look at in the interview process, and it is going to be a challenge for them. I think if you'll recall from many meetings ago where we were trying to solve this puzzle of how do we get everything to fit from a budget standpoint, our number for furniture got skinnied up a little bit, so we definitely need a good partner that is able to show us a range of product that we can both be excited about and be able to afford. So this is an important selection for us tomorrow. I think that's it.
Schedule-wise, how are you? Are you on schedule, behind schedule? I know unseasonably wet,
Yes,
right?
it's
So,
seasonally wet. We've had a few good weeks of weather here, a couple, and it's been really good. Footings are a little bit behind schedule for starting, but I think I mentioned a couple meetings ago, with the precast enclosure, we'll pick up time during enclosure part of the schedule, so not concerned about the end date right now. So we'll be making sure we gather all the lead times here when we get all these bids in over the next few days, understand material lead times, and make sure we don't have any other issues that we have to jump on in regards to any materials that are out 2 years or anything like that. So, yeah, I think we're in good shape still.
We'll be counting on that CG Schmidt construction manager to push that CG Schmidt concrete subcontractor to get back to schedule there.
Yes, that's correct. We got the right guy leading the job too for that, so.
Bid package 4 is due Tuesday. How's the participation rates looking?
Some areas
So
it's
far.
good, some areas it's a little light, but bid day could change that instantly. Sometimes you get bids that you're not expecting, and sometimes you're expecting bids and they don't come in. So we've been busy making phone calls, trying to get as much coverage as we can. So what we'll be doing, trying to get the stuff ready for the next board meeting will be priority things like elevators and different things that have long lead times and impact the structure and enclosure part of the building. So the next couple board meetings will be a pretty heavy lift with trying to get selections and approvals. So that's what we'll be focusing on.
How are you feeling overall? Pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good. I'll be feeling a lot better hopefully in a couple months whenever the GMP's signed and we're got footings in the ground and you see something going up for once, after you look at the earth for so many months and it's just brown, it's like, but it is a huge site. I walked it today and it took almost an hour to walk around the site, and what you see from the road is just a part of it. When you go over that hill, there's a whole lot more space over there and a lot of stuff happening, so, yeah, I'm feeling good.
Tony, do you know when they're putting in the tile from the detention areas? Is that something they put in later? Because
No, they're hoping to get some of it in soon.
Okay.
I know once Enan Hughes gets started with some of their utilities, they're looking to get something done with those ponds so that they drain out.
Okay, I mean, they're going down, but
Yeah.
I think when they get the tile in, they'll go down at the rates that we're anticipating, so, yeah. Okay.
You're comfortable going with lead time on mechanicals and electrical?
Yeah, at this point, yep.
Any other questions, conversation?
since we talked about the road access, do we have any sense on construction time that they will be doing that, or the city working on, I think, was the 13th and 31st? I assume that's not gonna happen this year, but.
Yeah, so we don't have a timeline from the city. We don't have a timeline from the city. And then as far as Bader-Spidahl LLC, they are working on potentially doing a TIF for part of that. But they do want to get that north road in as soon as practical and possible. So it's on their short list.
I think that'd be something to alert parents of at Northside probably, if that's coming up.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll get the contract signed and executed, and then I'll talk to Fairgram and we'll see what we gotta do for the survey. And then we'll be able to get a date set, or they can start looking at dates. But that's a good point, Dylan. Make sure that we let people know when that's starting.
Okay.
Rick, I was going to ask,
Yeah.
I guess this is directed at Dick, but it'd be nice if the board could maybe get a tour at some point, maybe just prior to a board meeting or something.
So
How'd
we
you like
would,
to handle it?
yeah, so vehicle-wise,
Vehicle-wise, it's challenging right now.
so we could take a few people out at a time. Cause Mike has a UTV out there, construction UTV. We can go out hard hat and vest on, of course. and I'm set up that I can take somebody, or Ron can take somebody. The thing is parked over at Northside, so if you would like to get on the site, if you wanna just call me, we can schedule
No, I
something.
just thought maybe the board as a whole might want, it doesn't need to be at the next meeting, but sometime before it gets snowy.
Before the
cold.
snow flies.
Yeah, I think that opportunity will present itself. I think right now, though, it's just difficult to navigate the site physically. So that's why we gotta use the UTVs, so.
Yeah, once we,
It'd be better after the ground freezes.
we're kind of sitting still on some of the work for the trailer area, but we're about to make that decision to move forward. Once the trailers get set up in that road back in there, it'll be a lot easier to get cars right up to where the building is, and then we can walk from there. So certainly before snow flies, we should be able to arrange something if Fig wants to, so.
When did you say the drone?
They already did one drone flight. I think the next one's scheduled for either tomorrow or Friday. So I have them on a monthly cadence.
Maybe we share that with the board.
Are those put to the website?
They will be. Yep, and that's what we're gonna meet tomorrow to see, to make sure we can do access. And so Jen is back, and so I think you're invited to that too, Jen, right? Yep. So.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Have a good day, guys.
Moving on to informational items, boardsmanship and administration. Anything
Thanks,
else
Tony.
for administration?
I do not.
Do not have any
One
board-
quick thing.
Yeah.
They did just release are releasing the information for hotels for convention. So typically don't have to make up our mind this early yet. However, if we have folks who are gonna be there for 3 days, if we wanna try and get into some of the hotels that require a 3-day booking, you might wanna give us a sense of that. Typically, we have some that are there for 3 days. Many of you choose not to be there for 3.
So this is for WASB convention. Do you want us to send them to Chandra?
Yeah, that'd be great. If you know, it's January 22nd to 24th is the Wednesday through Friday dates this year.
Okay. I do not have anything for boardsmanship. No current Board of Education correspondence that is outstanding. Committee reports. Jim? Terry?
EIE met, on August 8th. There was a little glitch with invites, so they didn't have a quorum, so nothing, they had a meeting and met informally, but nothing really got acted on.
Okay. Phil?
Nothing for me.
Teresa?
Nothing.
Mike? Eric? Nothing for me. Dylan? Nothing. Nikki?
Nope.
Okay. Agenda items for future discussion from board members. Liaison reports. I do not have any communications from MEA or Mass. And we have 5 minutes for the press. Okay. Then at 8:03, I'd entertain a final motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I've got a motion by Terry and a second by Eric. By voice vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.